Hey guys, what's up? Today I decided to break down a beat that has a little bit of a Disclosure versus Kaytranada type vibe. I hope you can learn something from it, and if you have any suggestions on what to work on for the next video, please let me know in the comments. And this is what it sounds like. Let's start with the drums. So again, I have a kick. This is what it sounds like. I always make sure that when I use audio in Ableton, I grab this and move it all the way to the left. This way you catch all the transients of it, because usually it's rounded off a little bit. It's a neat little trick. Similar to my Phineas breakdown, I have a rim on every second kick. I have a clap on every second kick, which is a little bit pan to the left. And every fourth kick I have another clap, which sounds like this. It's panned a little bit to the right. All three of these samples are put forward in time. As you can see, minus 32 milliseconds here. And the clap that comes on every fourth kick, a little later, but still before the kick. What I've done with it is, I warped it and put it in beats transient mode to cut off a little bit of the tail. It makes it more choppy. If you listen to the difference, it's just more tight. The kick and the claps together sound like this. Moving on to the bass. Again, like in my previous video, I divided it into two types of basses. One is an 808. I used the 808 by Murder Beats, but you can use all kinds of 808s. I've just been a fan of this specific one lately. I've made sure that this 808 hits on the most important points, so that the other bass is more of a fill. Sometimes it's hitting with the kick, like here, and sometimes it's just after the kick, so it gives it a little bit more of a bounce. And what I do to give it more of a groove, every now and then, I take a note like this one, and instead of putting it here, I delay it a little bit. It gives it more of a lazy feel. I have done it only here with this 808, but you'll see it more with the fill. And I've divided it in a top layer and a bottom layer. The top layer is a mini Moog, Arturia's Moog emulator preset called Stocky Square. I might have played around a little bit with the decay time, I'm not sure. If you open it up, you can show more of the high frequencies or less, depending on what you like. And I layered that, so I cut all the low end of it, and I layered that with the sub bass. It's again the Serum Sub DSKPRC sub preset. And the bass together with the claps and the kick sound like this. So you see the keys that it always plays with the kick. It gives it a groove. So this fill, for example, instead of being exactly on the grid, I moved it off grid a little bit here and on different parts like here as well. So it gives it a lazy feel. I have one quick switch up with the kick, which is like a New Jack Swing type move, I guess. I have my 808 with the same pattern as before, but the kick, instead of hitting on the second beat, I move it forward a little bit, so it gives it a cool groove, if you check this out. Instead of this. Those are neat little things to just keep it interesting. Next thing is the synths. I have used a CS80 pad again. And I usually just play around and stick with whatever feels good to me. I liked it hitting on the first and keeping it fairly simple so it doesn't get too complex. didn't even do much processing on it. I might have modified the preset a little bit. It's from the CS80, the brass pad, and I like the swell that it has. On its own I didn't even process it much, but later I just take out a lot of the lows. If you want to clean up the mix more, you can get an EQ and remove some resonant frequencies. I like the way it sounded filtered out already. I layered that with this synth. This just plays back and forth with the previous synth. If you can see here and here. I muted this one. So sometimes what I do is I play around with things, and if I don't like them, I just mute them manually. For example, here, instead of just deleting it, I've left it here, but I didn't like it, so I volume automated this down, so this doesn't play at all. I can basically just delete it. By pressing 0, you can just deactivate it. So this is what it sounds like. Here I've also added a pause to add some silence. In the entire group, I grouped all my synths together. The third element that I added, and I panned that a little bit to the left and made it come a little early because it had a lot of attack. Let me solo play it. And as you can see, it has a lot of reverb on its own already. All of them together, they sound like this. So on the individual groups, I actually didn't do much processing, except for one thing. In these second chords, I added a Haas effect. If you listen, you can feel it's quite wide. And what I did is I duplicated the chains. I have one signal that's just the way it is, and then a second one that's delayed by 10 milliseconds, and it's on the right side, and the previous one is on the left. So the left one plays a little bit earlier than the right one, and it just makes it feel very wide. And that entire group has some processing, so let me turn it all off. So I added just an EQ to cut all the low frequencies. I added a glue compressor to combine them a little bit and reduce the peaks and just make it sound like one whole thing. Really short attack because I wanted to compress almost immediately, and a little bit of a longer release so that it catches some of these tails as well and pushes them up. And just some makeup gain. Some makeup gain to get back some of the lost volume. A little bit of OTT and just 12%. I didn't do anything with these settings. It just brought out a little bit more of the high frequencies. This is if I do it very extreme. Sorry for no warning, but I just did it subtly. And then a little bit of a saturator. I just boosted the drive by 3 decibels because I wanted the upper harmonics to come out a little bit more, because they're quite filtered, these sounds. Then lastly, I just use a utility to do the volume automation, where it ducks whenever I want a pause to happen. It's a great way to just have overall control over the sound. Whenever you want something completely gone, you just slap a utility on it afterwards, and then you modify the volume. Make sure you do it after the effects, because sometimes the effects could add extra noise. Lastly, I removed low end again, just in case any of the low end came through, to give space for the bass. It's around 115 Hertz. I dipped the mid top frequencies a little bit, but it doesn't make big of a difference. And then lastly, I added a sidechain compressor because I like the bounce. I know Kenny, for example, Kenny Beats doesn't like it, but for songs like that, it gives you a nice like head bobbing feel. I sidechained into the kick that I have and lowered the release a little bit so it comes back quicker, and quite a low threshold, as you can see. By the way, this view you can get by clicking here. Initially it looks like this, and you have to open the compressor, and then you get this cool view. That's about it for the sounds already. I added a reverb on top of it, and even that is just a stock Ableton reverb. I introduced it into the mix but up to -10 volume wise. This here, as you can see, it's the normal standard basic Ableton reverb. I did cut the low frequencies and some of the high frequencies, because in reverb you don't usually in real life hear a lot of the really high end. I added the same volume automation as I have on the group of the synths, so that there's no reverb playing when I want there to be a pause. And then I even sidechained that reverb, because that reverb might cover some of these duckings from the sidechain before. So by having another sidechain on this bus, I make sure that even my reverb gets sidechained to the kick and it flows. This is what the reverb alone sounds like. It just fills the back and gives it more of an ambience. So now we got the kick, the clap, the bass, and the main instruments. They sound like this. So the second loop, I didn't change much of the instrumentation. The only thing that changes are the top drums and the percussion fills. So let's get right into them. The first half has just a little bit, so I wanted to keep it quite empty. Let me play it for you. And as you can see, it works quite well with the kick and the clap. It's just random percussions that I found. This is like a cool like shaker sounding thing. I've got this little effect thing. And what I did is I used the beat warp mode, and it's with no transients, so it's very, very short. If I had not done it, it would have sounded like this. So you can literally take any loop and you turn down the length of these transients, and it's gonna give you a really cool percussive effect. And I panned it all the way to the left, and the next effect on a little bit to the right. Then I've got this one. You must think I'm obsessed with Murder Beats, but I just recently got his quarantine pack, and I've just been playing around with these sounds. You know how it is when you get new sounds and you just get hooked. And then another one. Here I did the same thing again with the transients. It sounded like this. It was actually from a longer loop. And then I cut it, like removed the tails of each of the transients, and it just gives a nice hit. I panned it to the side as well. And then an open hat, which is from Cohen Sound's new pack, which is amazing. I recommend anyone to check it out. Then, in the second part of the first loop, I introduced more shakers to give it a little bit more of a move. So this is what it sounds like. And basically what I did is I kept the same percussion as before, except for I added these shakers. There's one on every kick hit, which is a little bit panned to the right, and it comes a little late. And it's quite soft in volume. Then I had one on every backbeat, I think. Someone in the comments told me about that. Backbeat, offbeat. Basically in between every kick hit. That one is always the same volume. I didn't even warp it. But then I added one every once in a while just before it, and it's not on grid, it's a little late. If it was on grid, it would be here. But I added it here. And I turned down its volume by 6 decibels. And together with the kick, it sounds like this. And for the shakers, it gives it like the back and forth thing, because I have the one on the kick, pan to the right, the one off the kick, pan to the left, and different volumes as well. The one on the kick is a little softer, so together they sound like this. And then here as well, I've got just a loop, because it sounds cool, like I repeated them a bunch of times. Move them a little bit off grid, just to make them a little less robotic, and that's it. And I layered that with this Cohen Sound loop, which is an open hat and another closing open hat. and it just leads nicely into the next section. And that is combined with a clap on the offbeat. Then in the second loop it gets a little bit interesting, because firstly I have this one kick that's moved a little bit forward to give it that new jack swing type groove, and I added this percussive element from a Louis Vuitton sample pack. It's panned a little bit to the right. I've done the same trick with the beats warp mode so that the transients have almost no tail, and it sounds like this on its own. And together with the kick and that loop, it just gives it such a cool feel. And I mix that with this, which is a guitar slap hit. It's a hit on a guitar, the wood of the guitar. And I move that a little bit off the grid as well, here, and here it's on the grid. And there you go. And that's already it. And what I did is with the drums, I filtered out all the low end. I didn't even compress it. Sometimes I would compress it, but when you choose the right elements and they already fit together quite nicely in terms of spacing, timing, then often you don't even need to do that much processing. Obviously, to get it ready for release, you would include more mixing things like more compression, more equalizing, take out every disturbing frequency, and many other things. But to get an idea down like this, this is already pretty solid. As you can see, it doesn't sound too bad qualitatively either, and I haven't even done much mixing. Then the last thing is I just added this intro. In an actual beat, I would maybe not just have that. I would add elements to make it more interesting. But the whole idea started off with these chords that are just played by playing around a little bit. And then into the drop, I just repeated the last chord 4 times and opened up the filter, as you can see. Just before I completely took out the volume, it's hitting at the same time as claps. These claps are 2 different ones again, always. And then into the drop, I have this little effect. It's a reversed kick. It's the Madison Fucked one-shot kick. The kick sounds like this. I have it on the left side because I added this vocal sample from the Mark Johns sample pack, and it's a woman laughing, and it sounded quite cool. This automation you see here shows that it goes from the left side all the way to the right side. So when the volume of the chords drops, then you just hear her laugh on the right side. So the effects together sound like this. And it gives a cool effect going into the drop, if you check this. Yes, and that's about it already. I hope this was explanatory enough, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'm planning on doing a video focusing more on mixing related things in the future, and also just different styles, because I think as music producers we should enjoy a variety of styles and not just ever stick to one style. And in the end, it's just all about how it makes us feel. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for listening in. And here's the final result again.